know, there never seems like a good place to end those jams. They're always far, far, far too much fun. Hi guys, how you doing? Nick Jennison. It is the Monday Guitar Show. We're here to do the thing that we do on Mondays, which is hang out and chat about the guitar. And of course, since it's Monday, since we've got our guitars in hand, we should get cracking with the chatting. Now, folks, first of all, if you are new here, I want to take this opportunity to welcome you on board. It is great to have you. We do this every Monday where we hang out, we talk about guitar. Our objective over the course of the next hour that we have together is to turn you into a fractionally better guitar player when you leave than you were when you arrived. It's no small task, but we've been doing it for years now. And man, I gotta tell you, I am over the moon with how many of you guys are making solid progress with the stuff that we talk about in these streams. First of all, before we go any further, I want to apologize for being so casually dressed. It is really cold today. I don't know what's going on, man. I think it's almost like I'm living in the northeast of England where things get really cold really quick, but winter has struck us with a vengeance today, let me tell you. So I am feeling the cold and therefore the hoodie is staying on, but you know, what are you going to do, guys? Got to stay warm. So anyway, listen, if you're a new viewer, welcome. If you're one of our returning streamers, it is great to have you. As PJ has rightly pointed out, it is almost 4 years that we've been doing this. It's crazy. My hair was an entirely different color when we started. What are you going to do, man? You know, having a lot of fun. It's been so much fun so far, and we have no intentions of stopping. So listen, if you've been with us this whole time, or with us any length of time, sort of in between day one and now, it's great to have you. Thank you so much. It would be very, very lonely without you. Now, before we go any further, I just want to take a quick second to switch some things off. I also want to take a quick second and tighten this camera up. I've brought that out just a little bit too wide. There we go. That is much better. I felt like I was sitting so far away from you, and now we're face to face. We like a little bit of that. So anyway, let's get cracking with a few of today's hot topics. First of which is the link that you will find in the description, right? So down, if you click on the description down below, we got a link for you. And this link is going to take you to a Christmas gift from our friends over at Lick Library, who are, of course, one of today's sponsors, because today's stream is brought to you by Guitar Interactive Magazine, licklibrary.com. Go to licklibrary.com for all of your lesson needs, guitarinteractivemagazine.com for all of your news, reviews, interviews, gear, all that other non-lesson, but still really valuable, really good stuff. Now, anyway, speaking of Lick Library, we've got a gift for you, and our Christmas gift this week is going to be a free lesson. Now, all the lessons we refer to in the courses this week, or this month rather, on our streams are going to be available for free, linked in the description. And the first one that we're talking about today is Tom Quayle's first lesson on visualizing the fretboard. It is gold, right? And it's the basis for how I and a lot of other guitar players think about this stuff. So if you want that lesson for nothing, for zero, for nada, go to the link down below, go check it out. It's going to be a lot of fun. Now, we will be talking about a lot of the topics that go in that lesson today, but of course, you want Tom's perspective on this because Tom is the man for all of this sort of business, as a lot of guitar players will rightly point out. And of course, a great guitar player. I mean, let's be honest, we just want to hear Tom play, right? Certainly how I feel about things. Anyway, go there, go check it out. In the meantime, before we go any further, let's say hellos and then we'll get cracking. So first things first, our first through the door is our friend Ivan Mandujano Balas, I'm guessing, or is it Mandujano? I apologize if I'm mixing this up, but even still, he says, I paid solo from Tom Quayle in Android and was good until they cancelled the app on Android. Oh man, you're joking. They're still going on iOS, but including free update, Android users don't deserve that. That is a shame, man. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sure there is a good reason though. Now, that's not something these guys are going to do. I know Tom and David BB, who are two of the guys behind Solo. I know them personally. They're great guys. I know for a fact they wouldn't have done this if it wasn't for some overwhelming technical issues. So fingers crossed, be back in Android. Even still, man, Solo's a great app. I'm sorry that you're not getting to use it. But hopefully, hey, who knows, hopefully we'll be back with you soon. Marcin is in the house. Marcin, is great to see you. Sacred Godslayer is here. PJ is in the house. Timothy Appling is tuning in. Marcin, I agree. It feels like nighttime. It feels like it's been nighttime for a long time today. We're getting close to that winter solstice where things get as dark as they're going to get, which is reassuring, but also for the time being, it's like, oh my God, gross. Do not like. Larry Warren is here, Foghornish is here, Helmet Strap is tuning in, Steve McD is saying, hi there, anybody else update their Quad Cortex and buy both of the new QC compatible plugins at half price? It's a hell of a deal, let me tell you. I, to my shame, haven't bought any of the plugins and ran them on my QC. I don't know what it is, man. Like, I just like the captures of my amps. I think the captures I've done and the captures that are stock of the Super Kraken are so good that I haven't felt any compulsion to actually run out and buy the plugins, but it's cool that they're available. Personally, I don't know, I was always so satisfied with the sound of the QC to begin with. I didn't really feel terribly compelled to buy the plugins, but you know, there you go. Cranky Tom is in the house. Cranky Tom, it is great to see you. It has been a little minute. I don't know where in the world you're tuning in from, but it's great to have you on board. Godslayer says his internet connection has not been great. Hopefully it won't drop 1,000 times. Fingers crossed, man. We put up with some issues when I first moved to this studio. We put up some internet issues, and they seem to have, I'm going to have cursed it now. Have I got something made of wood? Touch wood. That it's not going to happen tonight, but we'll see. Ergo Hog is in the house. Great to see you. Paco Jastorius, great to have you on board. Jada Barter, or Jada Barter, I apologise, is in the house. Steve Orcs 01 says, Nick with those tasty licks, long time watcher. Steve, it's great to have you. Thanks for tuning in. It's great to see you. Mike Seedorf is here. Who else here for another outstanding lesson with the knowledge to present it in a fashionable way? Man, that's kind of you. That's very kind of you to say so. Havael says, hello Nick and Stuart. Stuart Shields, of course, the man behind all of this good stuff. He's throwing those notifications out to you guys. So yes, hi Stu Shields. We do like ourselves a bit of Stu here. Larry Warren says last week's lesson was amazing. Thanks, man. This is going to pick up and carry on with the same sort of spirit, I believe. Kim is tuning in from somewhere either very sunny or even just slightly more sunny than where we are right now. Our London studio is always a little bit warmer than it is in my studio up here. New camera, yes indeed, new camera. So we're up to 4 cameras now. Check this out. I'm going to show you all the angles. Look at this. We've got 1 camera. We've got 2 cameras. We got 3 cameras, we got 4 cameras. Can you believe that? Right, potential for a 5th, but you know, it's the march of progress. Chris Davis is here. Citizen 741X says solo is great. My knees, thanks man, I appreciate it. My knees hurt too. Mark Webster is here. Dylan Jessup is here. Block 18 is here. Man, oh yeah, and last but not least, Idle Saturday and Riffmaster 34, all in the house. I think we've got everyone. If we've missed you, I apologise, but even still, it is lovely to have you on board. Let's get stuck in. So, first things first, let's talk about the topic of today's stream, which is going to be the beginning of a whole series of streams on the topic of fretboard visualization. What? Fretboard visualization is a big topic. Basically what it is what do you see and what do you imagine when you are playing the guitar? How do you visualize the guitar's neck, visualize the guitar's fretboard? Is it scale shapes? Is it caged? Is it 3-note per string? Is it one of those big fretboard diagrams that come on YouTube backing tracks? Yes and no to all of the above, right? So we're going to see if we can elucidate you a little bit on the way the pros are visualizing the guitar. And I include myself in this as somebody who has been a professional guitar player for a long time. So I'm doing that in the strictest of senses, not in some kind of like big ego sense, like, hey, I'm the man, or any of that silly stuff. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about the bare bones of what we're playing over today. We're playing the key of C sharp. Now, the first thing I want you guys to do with me is I want you to play the following. We're going to play the C sharp minor pentatonic scale, right? C sharp minor pentatonic. We're going to play it in box 1. We're going to play it along with our backing track from the lowest note in box 1 up to the highest note in box 1. And then we'll talk a little bit more about why we're doing this very rudimentary exercise. So let's go to 2 hands of cameras and let's go like this. Here is our C sharp minor pentatonic. It's going to go like this. Now, hopefully you guys know your C sharp minor pentatonic scale. Let's try it again. And we're going to go one more time. Here we go. Okay, so Let me know in the comments if you had any difficulty with that. That's the important bit. If you had any bother with the C sharp minor pentatonic, let me know if that was an issue. If it was, then I will help, but I didn't want to preempt this and tell you what we're going to play. I wanted to see how you would respond when you played your C sharp minor pentatonic scale. Now, hopefully everybody got that, because we're going to do a little bit of thinking about this. Not so much a thought experiment, but a little bit of thinking. I just need to turn something off down here. We're getting a little bit of noise going on. That is better. Way better. Okay, now, much quieter. So our C sharp minor pentatonic scale is as follows. We have a scale that we call C sharp, and a scale that a concept that we call C sharp, and a concept that we call the minor pentatonic scale, and we put them together to make C sharp minor pentatonic. This is a bit like going and ordering, let's say you go and order a dish that is chicken and rice, right? You can tell I've been eating a lot for the gains lately. Chicken and rice, right? You can order chicken and rice all sorts of different ways. Chicken and rice is one thing. If you make it sweet and sour chicken, if you make it chicken tikka, if you make it jerk chicken, if you make it butter chicken, whatever. These are all flavors of chicken, but ultimately it's still chicken and rice, right? You can have jasmine rice, you can have lime and coriander rice. I don't know. Insert your favorite type of rice here. Ultimately, the core concept of chicken rice is the same. We just port it to a different concept of chicken and rice. We can think about the same thing as the pentatonic scale. The pentatonic scale is a core concept. We just port it to a different note to establish which pitches are within it. Now, if you were playing along, you probably would have played this under my instructions to play box 1. You would have played fret number 9, and you would have played 9, 12, 9, 11, 9, 11, 9, 11, 9, 12, 9, 12. Or you could have thought about it as big box, small box, small box, small box, big box, big box. I'm bringing this up for a reason, right? There is a reason why we're talking about this in particular. Now, I want to know, when you guys were playing this along, how did you think about this C sharp minor pentatonic scale? What did you conceive of when you were playing it? And I want to know, first of all, did anyone think of the note C sharp when you were playing C sharp minor pentatonic? Probably. I'm willing to bet you probably did. Did you at any point think of the note F sharp? Probably not. Did you think about the note G sharp? Probably not. The note B? Probably not. But you almost certainly thought of the note C sharp, for example. Root on the E string, says PJ. Absolutely. Now, this hints at an interesting observation, let's say, about the way that guitar players interface with music theory. So, as we go forward with this, I want you to bear in mind that music theory is not a monolith, and there are a plurality of music theories that we can view music through, and there are also a plurality of perspectives that we can use to view Western music theory, which is what we're playing when we play this sort of stuff, right? So I want to pose a few experiments to you, right? I want you to imagine two musicians. I want you to imagine a singer and a piano player. Okay, singer is over here, piano player is over here. If I were to say to a singer, without perfect pitch, if I said to a singer, hey, sing me a C note, well, that might be an issue, right? Most singers, unless they have perfect pitch, would need you to play them a C in order for them to produce that C note. If I said to a piano player, hey, play me a C, easiest thing in the world, right? Oh, there's the C button, bong. If, for example, I then continue, I think I used this analogy last week, but we'll continue all the same. If I say to the singer, hey, listen, sing me this note. Easiest thing in the world, no problem. If I play that note to a piano player and said, hey, play me that note, if they don't have perfect pitch, they would need to go searching for it and find that note. Now we go a little bit further here. If I said to a singer, hey, sing me the C major scale, can I hear a C first? But if I said, sing me a major scale from this note, easiest thing in the world. They would sing. If I said to a piano player, play me the major scale from this note, we need to know what the note is, we need to know what the major scale are, and more importantly, we need to know what the fingering is for that major scale. We need to know what notes are in there. Now, this is where guitar players are a little bit different, because if I said to you, let's assume we know a minor pentatonic scale, we're not doing major scale yet, but if I said minor pentatonic, let's pick a note at random. Let's pick the 4th fret on the low E string. We don't need to know what note it is. I'm sure you probably do, but we don't need to know what it is. Can you play the minor pentatonic from this note? Yes. Cool, all right. Can you play the minor pentatonic from the 11th fret on the E string? Yes. Did we need to know what notes were in there? No. Now, this is an interesting difference between the way guitar players and many other instrumentalists will interface with music, and it's all to do with the grid system that is the guitar's neck. Now, the guitar's neck has been described as a grid for obvious reasons. If we imagine those fretboard diagrams that we love so much, it's the grid, right? It's all laid out in a grid. We don't necessarily need to know the individual pitches that are in the concepts that we're playing, in these scales and these constructs. We need to know something a little different. Now, on a surface level, what we're looking for is a pattern, but in reality, what we're looking for is a formula, which is slightly different to the pure pattern approach to playing. Now, let's talk a little bit more about what that is. And why it is, for example. So the great thing about the guitar is if we take the major scale, for example. We'll take the major scale here, right? I'll take my 2nd finger, I'll play a major scale starting on C. And now I'll play the same thing starting on C sharp. And backwards. It's the same thing, only twice, right? Literally the same thing. Now, if I were to do this on a saxophone, right? If I were to do it on a sax or a trumpet or a piano, it would need to be different. I would need to know which notes were involved in each one of those 2 major scales that I'm playing to be able to play them effectively, because the fingering would have to be different. I can't just move it up one key and expect to get the same results, and certainly not on a complex instrument like a sax or on a trumpet or a trombone or another kind of horn. Now, it's no coincidence that a lot of modern music theory pedagogy comes from an era when the piano and the horns, let's say, were some of the primary popular instruments. And a lot of teaching is taught through the lens of these instruments. Now, what I've noticed myself is when I teach mixed instrument groups of students music theory, a pattern emerges. And the pattern is that horn players and piano players excel. Guitar players do okay. Bass players do a little bit better than guitar players. Singers and drummers get very much left behind. It's a question of perspective. Now, the question of perspective is all to do with the nature of your instrument. In this case, the guitar is somewhere between the piano, horn player, and singer. We're kind of somewhere in the middle of that continuum, where what we need is a root note to tell us where to start and where to anchor our set of pitches, and we need a formula. Now, the formula is the important thing, right? The formula is what enables us to construct major scales, minor scales, pentatonic scales, chords, sequences, you name it. It's all formula-based on the guitar, which shakes out in some sense as pattern-based. But the pattern is not the formula. The pattern is just a shorthand way of finding the formula. So let's talk about a minor pentatonic again and what it is when we play our minor pentatonic. And we're going to begin with the minor pentatonic as our basis here. So if we start with C sharp as our note, our minor pentatonic formula is as follows. Now, I'm certain you'll know this already. If you're a regular viewer, you will know this offhand, I'm certain. But the formula reads as follows. We get root, flat third, 4th, 5th, and flat 7. As soon as we get back to this next note, it's root again. Flat third, 4th, 5th, flat 7, root. Flat third. Now, the minor pentatonic box shape is just a shorthand. It's an easy recipe to produce this series of intervals. And these series of intervals in this hand position with our first finger on the root note will always fall conveniently in this shape. But the shape is not the intervals. The intervals are that's just where we find them. But what we're playing here is the series of intervals. Now, this is important. It is super important because it leads us into one of the most important distinctions between playing a scale shape and actually visualizing the fretboard, which is understanding the value, the function, and the sound of the notes that we're about to play. Because it's one thing to sit and play a shape. We can play the shape, yes, that's fine, that's cool, but unless we are doing it with intention and with intentionality about our playing, that's the same thing. Head up, Jennison. I am quite tired today, by the way. I did have a powerlifting meet the other day, and I'm still paying the price for drinking enough caffeine to kill a horse. I won't tell you how much went into my body, but it got me through a big deadlift, so we're okay. Anyway, this is not the hoodie I wore at the meet, by the way. I just have lots of powerlifting clothing, because powerlifting is a big fashion show. Anyway, so... what are we talking about powerlifting for? Anyway, so let's get into this and let's get a little bit deeper in terms of the notes that are available in our minor pentatonic. And specifically, we're going to draw one distinction. And the distinction is between the root notes and the other notes in the formula, right? The other notes in the formula. Let's talk about that. So, very quickly, let's go to these cameras so I can still talk to you. We have as follows. Our root note is going to be on fret number 9 on the E string, fret number 11 on the D string, and fret number 9 again on the high E string. That's where we find our root notes. And these root notes in this case are C sharp notes. They are root notes, C sharps, etc. All of our other notes in our shape we can think of as pentatonic notes, but notes that aren't the root. These are non-root notes. Now, these are important because our roots are where we visualize our scale from, but they're also where we anchor ourselves in terms of the sound of our playing. So by anchoring ourselves on these root notes, we have two types of sound that we can move between. The sounds in this case are going to be a very stable sound, which is root, and a slightly less stable sound, which are the other notes. Now, obviously we can go into more detail about this, but this is the fundamental here. Root notes versus other notes. Now, let's get into that with our C sharp minor backing track. And my challenge to you is going to be to play as follows. We're going to contrast the ends of our phrases. And the ends of our phrases are going to be as follows. We'll play one phrase that ends on any note other than the root note. So no root notes. You can play the root note, but you just mustn't end there. And then we'll contrast that against a phrase that ends on the root note. So it's any note other than the root, and then just the root, right? Let's take a listen, see how that shakes out. So if I go like this, that was a non-root phrase, then a root phrase. Non-root. And then ending on the root note. You take a turn, give me a non-root note phrase, so a non-root note on the end, and then a root note phrase, a phrase that ends on the root note. Clag that on the end and see how we get on. Same again, I'll go like this. A non-root note phrase, and then a root note phrase. Your turn, non-root note phrase, then root note phrase. Should be fairly simple to do, but I'll keep cracking. I'm going to take one more pass at this. A phrase that doesn't end on the root, and one that does. Your turn. Now, the reason we're doing this is because we established early on that we're going to kill that track before it goes to the fast bit or the loud bit. Now, we established early on that the way we visualize the guitar's fretboard, beg your pardon, put my teeth back in. The way we visualize the guitar's fretboard is with a combination of root notes and intervals. And with this particular exercise, we learn to distinguish between the root notes on our guitar and the other notes in our scale. Now, this helps us with finding root notes, but it also helps us with using the scale and being able to see the scale for what it is, which is a root note and a series of intervals hung from it. And it also gives us a sense of home and a sense of notes that are less home, for want of a better term. Now, we can go a bit further with this, but first of all, I want to draw your attention back to last week's lesson. Now, last week's lesson, we talked about the master pentatonic pattern. The master pentatonic pattern is as follows. For minor pentatonic, certainly, we will always find the minor pentatonic intervals laid out in this arrangement. If we take finger number 1, we place it on our root note, that will always be a big shape. And by big shape, I mean 3-fret shape. Why is that? Well, the reason for that is because the first interval in our minor pentatonic is a minor third. And the minor third is always this distance away up a single string. This big shape is always directly above another big shape. Big shape, big shape. Why is that? Well, that's because this note here is our root, and this note is a 5th, and the 5th is always on the same fret directly below the root note, apart from under one circumstance, which is when we get to the B and G strings. That B and G string crossing, that'll cause us some issues. But what we can think of is we can think of this array of notes, starting here with finger number 1, on fret number 9 in this case, we're playing in C sharp, with a big shape, and then a small shape immediately below it. A big shape immediately below it. Why is it a big shape? Well, because we've got a 5th, and we also have a flat 7, and the flat 7 is always 3 frets immediately above the 5th. There's our 5th, there's flat 7. Root, flat 3rd, 5th, flat 7. So with this in mind, we now have a little chunk of the pentatonic scale that we can play from any root note. So let's find a few. Let's take this C sharp note right here. It's fret number 6 on the G string. And let's construct a little scale on that. We have big shape immediately below, which you might think of as root and flat 3rd, 5th and flat 7. But you can just think about it as big shapes. There's big shapes. Notice this gives us the same note every time we play it. Here's another C sharp, fret number 4 on the A string. Now we are playing a shape here because it's unavoidable. The guitar is a symmetrical instrument in this sense. We will never have these intervals looking anything different apart from when we cross the B and G strings, which we'll talk about in a second. But let's do a bit of soloing with just these 4 notes. Now I'll remind you once again what those intervals are. The intervals in this case are root, flat 3rd, 5th and flat 7. Bonus points to anybody in the comments who can let me know what musical construct that creates. Root, flat 3rd, 5th, flat 7. Okay, let's play along with the backing track, and let's play this along with a bunch of root notes. I apologize. Okay, let's go here. You know what? I feel like I want to use the other camera because it's here, so I'm going to use this camera. It looks nice, right? Just a bit of visual variety. Oh, there's my mouth hanging out at the top of the shot. I need to move that, but never mind. We'll figure that out. Okay, so there's our C sharp notes. There's my 2 big shapes hanging out on the top. Here's another one. What about this C sharp here? Yep, we can have that. What about another C sharp? Let's take this one here. Same 2 shapes, 2 big shapes, dead easy. What about this C sharp here? Well, this is where things get a little bit sticky because what have we got? We've got C sharp, fret number 14, big shape. We can't go immediately up one string to our big shape because we need to adjust by 1 fret to compensate for our B string. But apart from that, the same concept applies. So here what we've got, as some of you guys have rightly pointed out, a minor 7th arpeggio. A minor 7th arpeggio. And as Chris Brown's rightly pointed out, the minor pentatonic could be viewed as a minor 11th arpeggio. Yeah, absolutely. It's minor 11, no 9. That's what it is. Incidentally, a minor 11 arpeggio, the worst minor 11 arpeggio in the world is the open strings, like this. That's an E minor 11 arpeggio. gross. But minor 11s, really pretty if you play them and they sound nice. So they can be really pretty, they can be kind of gross, but yeah, it is, a minor pentatonic is a minor 11th arpeggio. That's essentially what it is. Now, what makes it an arpeggio, what makes it a scale? Potato, potato, I think, personally. I guess if you play it in order, it's an arpeggio. And by order, I mean order of roots, flat third, fifth, seventh, 11. Now, let's go a little further with this. So, we talked a little while ago about the idea of taking the minor pentatonic as the core, or the pentatonic scale as the core of our visualization. It's a good way of thinking about this because it gives us a sense of hierarchy about the notes that we're choosing to play, but we don't always want to play purely pentatonic. Sometimes we want to play major scales, minor scales, modal scales. And there are some easy ways to find these notes. When we begin with our minor pentatonic, we develop an understanding of which intervals are contained within. Now, we do need to finish fleshing this out, but we can then take the minor pentatonic and bolt some other intervals to it to make major scales, minor scales, modal scales, let's say. Easy way to do it. We can also do the same thing with the major pentatonic to make major scales and major modal scales too. But in this case, we'll stick with minor for the time being because we haven't got time to do all of them, but we'll get through as many of these as we can. Now, let's take this big shape that we just talked about and let's fill in some other notes. So if we were to take the idea of the minor pentatonic, which has root, flat third, fourth, fifth, and flat 7, and turn it into a minor scale, an Aeolian minor scale, the natural minor scale, the Aeolian mode, same thing, potato, potato, we would need the following notes. We'd need root, second, well, we don't have that, flat third, already got that, fourth, already got that, fifth, already got that, flat 6, well, we don't have that, and flat 7, we've already got that. So we need to add a second and a flat 7. Well, let's go looking for them, right? Let's go looking for these. So when I take a look at my root note, I can see that my flat third will always be here. This gives me two potential places where I could put my second. It could go here, it could go here. This one's going to be the flat second, this one's going to be the second. So now I know that if I'm on a root note, I can play my second here and my flat third here. And already we have that beautiful thin Lizzie-ized pentatonic scale where we get this. A lot of fun, very cool sounding scale, but what we've done is we've added in this second to our minor pentatonic, and now we have most of the way to being a minor scale. But we also need a 6. So in this case, we need a flat 6 because we're playing the natural minor or the Aeolian scale. Here, I've got my 5. Here, I've got my flat 7. Well, look at that, right? I could put a 6 here. I could put a 6 here. My options are flat 6 and raised 6 or natural 6. In this case, I need a flat 6, so I'm going to play it here. Here's pentatonic. Here's pentatonic plus 2. Pentatonic plus 2. And flat 6. Are there other places we can find these? Yes, and I'll show you where they are in a second. But first of all, let's explore this. Now, this is another facet of the way that the pros are visualizing the fretboard. It's not just a case of choosing legal notes. Legal notes. Let's use the analogy of chess here, right? Does anybody play chess? Let me know in the comments if you do. I used to play chess in school. I was terrible, absolutely awful, but it was a particularly rainy winter. And I figured out that if I joined the chess club, I'd be allowed to stay inside. So I joined the chess club, sucked. And then got marginally better, but it was springtime and I decided I wanted to go and play football instead. So I went and did that. Terrible at football as well. Not a sporting person, apparently, which is why I chose the least athletic sport in the world. Anyway, immaterial. But the chess analogy is as follows. There are many legal moves that you can make on a chessboard. Right? If you are playing a game of chess, there are many legal operations you can make, many legal moves, things that are allowed within the rules of chess, right? However, not every legal move is going to be a good move. Not every legal move, every move that you're allowed to make, is going to be a good choice. And the same is true for playing scale notes on the guitar, let's say. So if you take a look at the idea of the scale shape as being just a collection of legal notes, a collection of notes that we're allowed to play. It's one way of looking at it, but it's not a very useful way of looking at it because it doesn't give us a sense of what might be a good choice to play at any given moment because we don't appreciate the value or the function of each individual note. So as the pros are visualizing these scales, they're visualizing them as function as much as they are visualizing them as shape. The shape is just where the notes happen to be, but understanding their function is super, super important because it allows us to make smart choices, if that makes sense, right? So anyway, got some really great comments coming in. I'm going to highlight some of those in a second. So let's talk about what's in here. So once again, to quickly remind you, root note, minor pentatonic, with another root note. There's a second. There's a flat six. There are other places we can play seconds and flat sixes, but we're going to stick with these for now. Let's try that along with our backing track. I'm going to begin by playing just root notes. Except I'll try and play them in tune. It's cold in here, my guitar's going out. Whoa. Get in tune, you bugger. Here we go. Close enough. Let's just try that one more time. I think this tuning peg has bit the dust. Give me a quick second, guys. Apologies. I'm going to tune this so it sounds at least halfway acceptable. I actually do think this tuning peg is on its way out. This guitar's taken a few knocks to the head. I know how it feels. There we go. That's looking a little bit better. Okay, here we go. Apologies about that. Here is C sharp. This one's out as well. What's going on? All of our root notes are out. Okay, there's C sharp. There's C sharp. There's another one. Here's some pentatonic. Let's bring in some of those other notes that turn it into a minor scale. 6, flat 6 and 2. Loads of fun. Now, this gives me, as the player, an ability to choose, not just, hey, look, am I playing the right notes in the scale, but to choose what to do with those notes, which is a way more powerful way of visualizing the fretboard than just going, okay, what is the scale? But also, by ascribing meaning to this, by ascribing value to each of these notes, actually makes it easier to memorize, because we're not just trying to memorize, oh, what was the pattern? What was this one of several, 7, like, completely intersecting patterns that look really close to each other but aren't quite the same? We go, no, where's my root note? Where are these other pitches that attach to the root note? And it also allows you to calculate things on the fly. So, for example, we can also figure out where our second is in our next little spot. So, our next spot of strings, let's say. So, if we're playing here, let's say we're playing this, and we get to this third, we can infer that the second will always be a tone or 1 fret below our flat third. So we can infer that if this is our flat third, we can shift down 1 fret to access the second. There we go. And if you're used to hearing these intervals, it's quite easy for you to go locating that. Similarly, we can infer that the fifth, which is here, we know it's the fifth because power chords, the flat six is always going to be 1 fret above our above our 5 rather. So we play here. And away we go. And now we've got a great observation from Chris Brown, who's saying, the biggest lesson for me was to learn the arpeggios within the scales to better inform my note choices. For sure, right? Absolutely agree with this. In essence, there are tiers to how much complexity you're playing in any given time. And you could argue that the scale of complexity goes from note to dyad, technically, with 2 notes, but note to arpeggio to pentatonic to diatonic to chromatic, in terms of like how much tonal complexity, how much color you're adding, how many flavors you're putting in the cocktail of music at any given point. So yeah, would totally agree with that. But this is in essence the same thing. The only difference here is we're removing a few steps between arpeggio and scale by doing pentatonic out over. Now, let's continue a little bit further with this. This is quite good fun, because now that we've located this little series of intervals, this little business of playing, let's say, let me just go to these cameras actually. I quite fancy a little mini me in the shot. Now that we've located these extra intervals within our minor pentatonic scale, we can now also hang these from any of the big boxes, any of these 2 big boxes shapes that we talked about in our previous lessons. So if I find this C sharp here, for example, well, now I know that I've got a second here. How do I know that? Well, there's my root. Second is always 2 frets up, or it's 1 fret down from the flat third, same thing. I know that's my 5th, and therefore the flat 6 is going to be 1 fret above that. There's my flat 7. So I found my C sharp. And wherever I am, I can hang these notes on them. Here's another C sharp. You may be looking at that and going, well, that looks different. Well, when we get to the B string, we have to compensate because of the guitar's tuning. We've talked about that in previous lessons. The B string is tuned funny, so therefore we have to compensate by 1 fret when we cross the G and B string boundary, only when we cross it. Not when we play on the B string, but when we cross from G to B. That's when we have to make when we cross this GB boundary. So let's say we go between the D string and the B string, we have to compensate. Or if we go from G string to E string, we cross this boundary, so we have to compensate. But apart from that, it's all about the same. It's worthwhile. It means we can play AC/DC, right? Fourth tuning is great fun, but you know, this is, yeah. This is, it's worth it. The sacrifice is worth it. The compromise is worth it. But anyway, the upshot of this is I can now take any C sharp and start to hang these other notes on it. And I can also now start to make inferences about where my other notes might be in relation to these C sharps. So I know that I have a C sharp here in my C sharp minor pentatonic. So I know if that's a C sharp, and I have a flat 7 2 frets below, well, now I can get this. And I know I can find my flat 7 2 frets below my root. I know I can find my 5th immediately below. I can find the 4th immediately below that. Well, that should be this little box here. There's another big box. There's the box behind it. Would you look at that? There's another big box. and so on and so forth we go ad infinitum. Now, here we go. Here's the observation here, right? What we're doing is at no point in this am I necessarily thinking about let's call them like pre-generated scale shapes or preordained scale shapes where I go, apart from maybe the first one, minor pentatonic, makes a lot of sense. What I'm thinking of is I'm thinking of a root note, and from this root note, I am populating a series of intervals. How many of them are populating the entire fretboard? No, I'm just populating the area of the fretboard that I'm playing in any given time. So if I'm playing here, I'm populating the intervals around there. If I jump to this C sharp as my central locus, that will populate this area of the fretboard. Why? Because I'm not playing here. I don't need to see this. I'm not playing here. When I come to play here, I can quickly identify where the C sharp is and populate the intervals out from there. Now C sharp, obviously you can do this with any note. That's the whole point with this. But the point is that we're not really relying on box shapes. We're actually just generating this information in real time. We're able to actually see the notes that we're playing rather than see some transcription of the notes, which is what a scale shape is. Now, scale shapes are useful and they're not wrong. When I'm playing this stuff, I am playing scale shapes because it is unavoidable. The scale shapes are just a description of where the notes are, but that's not what I'm thinking about. What I'm thinking about is my root note, and I'm thinking about the intervals that lie between them. Now, here is another little analogy we're going to use. And the analogy is one of being on a body of water. Let's imagine that you're on a lake, or we'll imagine that you're at sea, and you have a series of small islands. Small, like a little archipelago or something, a word that I can never pronounce, right? Anyway, a little series of islands. These islands are your root notes. You can venture away from an island. You can go and swim in the sea, swim in the lake, but it always behooves you to know where land is, know where the nearest root note is. You don't actually have to go there. You can stay swimming for as long as you like, but knowing where that root note is will let you know that if you get hungry, or you get a cramp, or a shark arrives, or whatever, you can go back to the root note. Now, there are other islands, there are other root notes. You might take a look at that root note over there and go, I want to swim to that one. Fine. I want to jump to that one. I might want to swim past that one and just acknowledge its presence in case I get in trouble. That's how this visualization business works, is we are aware of our root notes and we're aware of the formulae that go into populating the thing that we want to play. And if you're used to playing scale shapes, that's all that you're doing. It's literally just playing the formula. The only difference is that we've missed a little bit of a step, let's say. So Chris Brown's absolutely right. I do love an analogy. Absolutely love an analogy. I think it's important. I think analogies are cool because, you know, eventually you'll find an analogy that will resonate with somebody. The more of them you throw out there, eventually somebody's going to go, that makes sense to me. That's the idea. Now, obviously, none of these analogies are perfect because they're analogies. If they were perfect, I would just say the thing. But even still. So, folks, we have a whole series of streams on this topic. So don't feel like this is a one and done. We've got loads more to talk about in this. So make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you go check out the free lesson that is available on licklibrary.com. It's going to be available for a week, right? And this is Tom Quayle's first lesson in a series he has on visualizing the fretboard, which is on locating root notes. Super important. You might have wondered through this whole session that we've had together, hey, what's going on with root notes? You keep talking about root notes. How do I know which one it is? We got a lesson for that. The link is down below and it's free. Lick Library members obviously also get it and the rest of the course. But for you guys who aren't signed up, this is a great chance to dip your toe in, see if you like it. And this is going to be free for a whole week until our next stream together. But in the meantime, let's answer some questions because we got some questions coming in. I'm sure you have them, so we'll get on them as we go. First one is our friend whose name I am going to butcher. I'm going to guess this is Ilmiras. I'm really sorry, I'm going to butcher that. I won't say it, but Ilmiras, great question. Off-topic question, but what pick are you using? Good question, right? So this is really weird. I found this pick on my desk today and decided to use it. This, hopefully you guys are going to be able to see it. Let me find a camera I can show it to you on. I'll show it to you here. This is a 3mm Dunlop Flow. Now, I don't normally use a pick this big but I found this one and it felt pretty good. So I thought, oh, we'll use that today. Why? I don't know. Now, I'm starting to experiment with this idea. Actually, Nick Harrison's in the chat, and he kind of turned me on to this idea. This idea of using lots of different picks. Now, this is not really fretboard visualization related, but let's say. So, I like to use lots of different picks, and I like to be able to use lots of different picks because they all sound a bit different, but I also feel like the slight variation that you get from playing with a different pick is a useful tool for practice, because we've talked about this before, but the idea of doing close variations of a skill, so taking a skill that you want to get better at and doing things that are similar but not the same, will give you huge improvements on the core skill you're actually trying to get better at. So let's say you try and get better at picking, get better at playing the guitar with a plectrum, using your favorite choice of pick, a pick that you think sounds good and feels good. Well, taking a slightly different pick and practicing with that, will require you to make some, I guess, real-time adjustments to the way you're holding the pick, the way you're striking the string, the amount of force you're using, the amount of pressure on the string, all this sort of stuff. That's going to require small real-time adjustments that in turn will manifest as skill learning, because what's happening is your body is relearning or momentarily refiguring out how to actually play with the pick. And that reinforces the motor pathways of the skill of playing with a pick. So I like to use different picks for this sort of deal. We're getting onto picking here. We'll get onto that in a second, but it is an interesting deal. Here's a one from Nick Harrison. Says the pick thing is actually a scientific thing. The thinner the pick, the more refined technique you need. However, tone is a whole different matter. I am gonna half agree with that because I feel like from my own experience with a thicker pick, you need a different measure of control, because it's not just about guiding the pick to the string. You have a much harder time with dynamic control, I think, with a thicker pick, because every note wants to be massive. Because the pick is big. So playing small notes with a big pick can be a challenge all in and of itself. And in addition to that, the big pick tends to be quite noisy. So I do agree. I totally agree, but I kind of half agree, if that makes sense. But definitely pick variation, I think it's important. Here's a cool one from Microsmart. It says, how to apply this technique when we tune in alternate tunings like open G? A good question, a good question. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. The only difference here is the pattern is going to be different. We take a root note, we locate the intervals, and we work from there. So for example, in open G, I'm going to take the analogy of open E, because I don't really play in open G very much, but I will play in open E style tunings at least some of the time, because it's quite nice with slide. So here what I might do is I might take my guitar and just quickly tune it to open E, which it will tolerate, I think. I might just grab another guitar for the outro jam, because this is going to be out of tune now. But let's say, for example, I've tuned this guitar to a nice sounding slide voice, open E. Now, I don't play an open E very often, so you'll have to forgive me not being super dialed on this. But an example might be that we can now recognize, with our open E tuning, where the notes are on the open strings. So we have root, fifth, root, slightly out of tune root. This D string tuner is kicking my behind today. Major third, fifth, root. So now we can recognize things like the flat third and the 7 are in the same place relative to the high E string. But now we have a major third here, a fourth here, and a fifth here. And so on and so forth. So if we go looking for things like a flat third, we can find it here. Or we could go looking for it maybe back a fret. So let's say we're playing in G. We can find it here. Now, the open tuning does disrupt the grid nature of the guitar somewhat, but it also presents us with a a one-finger chord. So what we lose in our ability to grid octaves very easily, we gain in our ability to play notes off this chord and build notes above the chord and below the chord. So you absolutely can apply it here. I should probably have made that clear that this was primarily for standard tuning, but I think standard tuning is so ubiquitous that it kind of goes without saying. But it's a very interesting question. But the same approach applies. You'll just find yourself with different visualizations. I am going to grab a different guitar because I think this guitar is out of tune beyond saving at this point. Either I have a sticky nut or a broken tuner. I think it's a combination of two. I think it's a sticky tuner, but I'll get this in some tuning shape because it's probably going to be easier for me to do this than just to grab another instrument. Even though I'm surrounded by instruments, I had to hang the basses on the wall, the bass and the baritone, because I run out of guitar storage. I've got new guitars coming. Specifically, I've got a really cool Baum guitar coming next week, hopefully, or sometime this month. It's been a long time coming, but they're a small company, so I'll let them off. And I also bought one of those wee teeny tiny pseudo mandolins from Thomann, which is coming. I'll show you that in the stream when it arrives. Might be here next week, who knows. As soon as the Baum is here, I'll be playing it. Anyway, guitar is back in tune. So we've got more comments about picks, incidentally, right? Didn't Paul Gilbert use a thin pick? Absolutely. EVH and Randy use thinner picks, for sure. It's a tone, let's say. It's like a tone thing. So thick picks, thin picks, they sound different. For me, thick pick, it sounds really big and robust and round sounding in a way that a thin pick won't, but a thin pick's going to sound kind of, I guess, brighter and a bit snappier and spankier. It's interesting. So here's one from Mal Riley. Great question. It says, do you think the guitarist sticks playing one or two keys to simplify playing and lessen confusion? Yeah, I think so. I think we feel guilty about this, but you only need to spend 30 seconds with a horn section to realize that suggesting playing in like B major will be met with absolute disdain. Like, oh, you're joking. Come on, B major. Bloody seven sharps. You'll be astonished with this. So we do, but we shouldn't feel bad about this because lots of instruments do, right? Lots of instruments will lean towards keys that feel comfortable, right? We get a bit of stick for this because Pentatonic Box 1, and of course, you know, we're guitar players, we can take it, right? I feel like I'm throwing my other instrumental friends under the bus here. I really don't mean to, but just to kind of highlight that. But I think so. I think, you know, we know A and we know... Dimebag talked about this. I won't say the words that he said because it's like, come on, bro, you're better than that. But still, he was talking about, you know, E's easy, F sharp is cool, F, oh, I don't like that. That's not much fun. Where I did personally have a little bit of grief with this was we were doing this is a little while ago. I was doing a band in theatres doing a tribute to Cyndi Lauper. Great music, absolutely killer. But the first song was Change of Heart, which is in F, concert F. And I don't know if you know about Cyndi Lauper's range, but my goodness, like just phenomenal range. You can think what you like about the sound of her voice. I'm a fan, but you know, I'm a wrestling fan, so I grew up liking Cyndi Lauper for that reason. Anyway, it's in concert F, and we moved it down a tone to accommodate our singer. Understandably, there are some notes in that song. It's crazy, right? So we move it down from concert F to concert E flat, and it's an E flat minor. Now, I would get horribly confused reading the chart because it's Aeolian, and it had like C flat chords in it, and like B flat, C flat major, B flat 7. Because that's the name of the chord, right? And the, I guess you could maybe write it in D sharp minor. Even still, it was quite confusing. Whereas when I started thinking about it as, okay, no, root, flat 6, 5 chord, flat 7 chord, it all started to make a whole load more sense to me. So just personal experience, but I did clam a few times on that in the opening song of the set. That was never fun. Let me tell you that. Folks, I'm going to have to leave it there because we've got so much to talk about and we've got weeks to do it in, right? Don't forget, If you're not already subscribed, hit the subscribe icon. It will enable us to let you know when we're about to go live. We've got loads of great content for the rest of the year, which is not very long. Go check out the lesson by Tom Quayle, which is for free, available for free to Lick Library members and non-members alike. For 1 week it's available, right? Members, this is going to be available to you after the fact, but everybody else, you get a week with it, right? The link is down below. Go check it out. I will see you guys next week. We'll continue this discussion. It's going to be fun, but for the time being, let's jam out a little bit more on that fun sounding backing track. I'm going to take it from the very beginning, and I think once again I'm going to use these cameras, because these cameras are looking pretty nice today. Say these cameras, this camera. What about you? Where do you go? This camera here, that's the one. Take a little bit of activating. But anyway, I like the way that looks. That's really nice. Maybe a little bit dark. And also the bokeh on the headstock is a bit much, but even still. Yeah, that's working for me. Folks, I'll see you next week.